KMSU.
Is Dustin there, please?
This is Dustin.
Hey, Dustin. Neal Smith. How you doing, man?
I am excellent. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Once we figured out where the heck we were in the time schedule, but we got it all straightened out, and that's great.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time out with me today.
No problem. Happy to help out.
Well, first I want to ask you, I guess looking back over your career, your Hall of Fame career, I mean, did you ever really imagine, I guess, the influence that you would have? I mean, not just on drummers, but I guess, musicians really across the board.
Well, the way the band started off and our expectations were probably, fairly. I mean, we always felt great about what we were doing, but we knew we had an uphill battle to achieve some things. But the ultimate goal of, having $1 Billion Babies go to the #1 record and in the trade magazines and around the world, and to eventually get into the Hall of Fame, the people that we've influenced, myself on drums and Glenn and Mike Bruce on guitar and Dennis on bass guitar, and Alice as a singer as well. I think that we never thought it would go to the extreme or last as long as it has, which has been, I think, the most amazing thing to me, and that probably more than anything has really humbled us. Even though on stage we're pretty thunderous and like I said, not too we come out of our shells, and I think that over time I credit the music with an awful lot of that, but. I think the advent of computers and the internet has certainly helped, spread the word about the original band, and I'm still pretty amazed by by everything that's happened, especially in the last 5 years since the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, not just the music, but I mean just the look of the band, the attitude, and the aesthetics and the stage presence and all that stuff. I mean, it's hard to kind of point to another band that had that much influence on music.
Yeah, well, I mean, we were inspired by we were a first generation after the British invasion, and all the bands that we liked were the real cocky rock and roll down and dirty bands. There were a lot of great bands, and they each had certain elements that inspired us, and certain musicians that inspired us, and I think that encompassed what we came and our focus. And just the hair. I mean, everybody freaked out about the Beatles and the Stones having such long hair, and I'm thinking, man, I can have hair a lot cooler than these guys, and all you got to do is just don't cut it. My sister, Cindy Smith, Dennis Dunaway's wife, I mean, even back then in high school, she had beautiful long hair to her waist, and I'm going, yeah, if she can do it, I can do it. And so it was just always going to an extreme that no one had ever gone before.
Sure. Well, I want to ask you, Neal, about, I guess, the writing and the recording process for the Alice Cooper group. I mean, did you guys write things together, or did you kind of write your own respective parts and try to put it together?
Well, it was everything was written individually. I mean, Alice wrote, Michael wrote, Dennis wrote, and I wrote. Glenn would help, and I'll mention when that comes into play. And then like Mike Bruce would write a song, and then when we lived in Michigan, he and I would work on the song together. We had a studio. Well, we've always had a studio, so I'd play the drums, he'd play the guitar. We start working on the song and arranging it. And then, Dennis would come in as a rhythm section. So it would always vary. There was no certain pattern. Even when we lived together, when I first joined the band in California, the songs were already written that were basically on Pretty Few and Easy Action. There were a few songs added to those, but Frank Zappa's Straight Records, 2 albums, and we basically just worked on them every single day to try to fine tune them, make them better, make them different. And so there really wasn't a set pattern, like I believe in the Beatles with Paul McCartney and John Lennon. I mean, they always wrote all the songs, and occasionally there'd be a song from George Harrison. But we would I mean, when I wrote a song, I would bring it to Michael. When Michael wrote a song, he and I'd work on it, or he and Dennis were Under My Wheels. There's a song that Dennis started, and Michael came in and joined him on it and helped him with it, and became Under My Wheels. So there was never a formula for it. Somebody would come up with an idea, and we'd try to put something together. And really, once Bob Ezrin started working with the band, he became like the soundboard. If for some reason, because we would always, all five of us, would never say to anyone, well, the song isn't really good enough to be on the album, or something about it just isn't there. Once we, and that didn't happen too often. Most everything that we worked out as a group, ultimately all five of us, would appear on an album, and then Bob would take it and do his thing to it, which would take it to his arrangements. I don't think it's not a secret that I'm 18 was originally about 7 or 8 minutes long, and Bob Ezrin took it and made it into a 3-minute song. That was his magic, his arrangements of taking an idea and turning it into a hit single. And then the song like School's Out, we'd be working on it, and we needed an intro, and that's when Glenn Buxton came up and had the beginning, the intro to School's Out. So everybody would and depending on how strong that influence was, School's Out was definitely a song that all five of us wrote together. It was, when you sit down as that many people, you say, well, isn't that a little bit difficult to do it? But we were so, we were one mindset. Our work ethic was very, very strong. We worked every day. We were either in the studio recording or writing songs, or on the road or rehearsing. That's what we did every day for almost the full duration of the band. And so when we would sit down to write a song, that was one of the most fun times, actually, because the creative juices. Mike Bruce would come up with something. Oh my God, what a great riff! And it was No More Mr. Nice Guy. These things were coming out, left and right all the time. So it was, and it's great. Nobody's really asked me about that question too much, but that's such a huge part of, the theatrics and the touring and the shows and all that was one thing. But the foundation for everything was our music, and that's a great question.
Yeah, it does seem like maybe some of the stuff would get lost, I guess, in the theatrics. But when you strip all that away, the music obviously was amazing as well. And I know with coupling that with all the theatrics and the stuff on stage, that's incredible that you guys were able to kind of keep both, juggling like that at the same time.
Well, we were just a bunch of show-offs. We're like 5 Daffy Ducks on stage. We would go up there and do anything we can do to perform. Everybody had their role, and everybody, my thing was just have the biggest drum set in the world, and that was my contribution to it. And sometimes we'd go theatrical, and like the fight scene in School's Out, on Gutter Cat versus the Jets, I'd jump over the drums and start fighting with Alice or Glenn, or we had the theatrical stuff happening on stage that we could all sort of leave the traditional. Alice just wasn't a singer anymore. He became an actor on stage. I did the same thing, and everybody else, but with their instruments, joined in and did the same thing. Mike Bruce sort of broke away, and Glenn from guitar once I put him down and did different theatrical things. And I think once we realized what Alice Cooper was, because when we came up with the name, it didn't mean anything. Alice Cooper could have been anything in the world, and we were all art majors in college, and so we could create whatever we wanted. Once we realized what was working, it just opened a whole great. It was like a palette. It was like an artist having a painting to work with, and it was blank, and it was a blank slate. We could just take it anywhere we wanted.
Sure.
And especially when it came to the hangings and the killings and the electric chairs and the guillotines. Then we just went, okay, nobody else is doing this. We can do it. This is our baby, and we can just take theatrics and the dark side of rock and roll, which the dark side of rock and roll ever since the 50s with the songs about, somebody gets killed in a car accident. That's always been a part of rock and roll, the dark side. And the Doors took it lyrically to one level, and then I think we just pushed it over the top with our theatrics then after that.
Well, when it comes to all that stuff, over the years, you guys, one after another, huge hits, and, the stage show kind of grew. I can't imagine you guys were making much money having all these trucks and all this stuff touring around. Were you breaking even, or what was I guess the outcome of that?
Well, you have to remember in those days you toured to sell your album, and so we were. I mean, if we we made money on especially Billion Dollar Babies because we're one of the first bands to actually be grossing more than $1 million a month back in 1973. And if today, of course, it's a totally different story. But people are paying $3, $4, $5 a ticket to do that, and we started going from the big venues like Madison Square Garden to like Three Rivers Stadium in Pennsylvania. I mean, big outdoor baseball stadiums, and we started doing that on a regular basis. So. It was, we made money, but not to the extent that people do today. But the most money that we made, because we had such a huge show and we were moving a lot of people, and we were, we had planes. We traveled in our own private planes, jets and different planes, and so that's all expensive. So we did better than break even, but most of the revenue came from the songwriting and the record sales.
Sure. Well, this might be an odd question, Neal, but I wanted to get your thoughts on the Muscle of Love album. I've always loved that one, but I know it kind of gets some flack from the band. Is that because maybe your memories of, I guess, tensions in the band at that point, or what are your thoughts? I guess.
I know what I don't know who ever says anything negative about the album. I love the album, and Muscle of Love to me was, I mean, Teenage Lament was a song that I wrote that was the last single that the band did. And I thought I was kind of surprised when that was chosen by Warner Brothers as the single, because I thought "Muscle of Love" was an amazing song, and I loved it. It's still one of my favorite songs to play in the world. It's a great song, and but it was just we were going to we recorded that album. We took a year off. We were going to get back together again. Alice didn't want to, so that's what happened. And, these other rumors or urban legends. But we had an agreement. We all had agreements, and because I wasn't about to walk away from $1 million a month as a band, and nobody else was. So, but as far as Muscle of Love, the songs were great. It wasn't produced by Bob Ezrin, but we tried something different with the packaging. But we always try different things with the album cover and the packaging, and it sold 800,000 copies immediately. It didn't go platinum. And all of a sudden, selling, when Easy Action and Pretty's for You together sold 20,000 copies, and Muscle of Love sells 800,000 copies like in the first couple of weeks, everybody says, what a flop it was. And I'm going, man, I'll take 800,000 sales in a couple of weeks any day of the, any time. and,
sure.
and I agree with you. I mean, I think it's as good an album as we ever did. Bob Ezrin, like I said, didn't produce the album, but Jack Richardson, who worked closely with Bob, and Bob was his protege, did, and Jack Douglas also was in there, and so they're two really good producers, and I thought the songs were arranged well, they were recorded well. There were, there was, people talk about tension, there was no different tension than the only tension was ever that the band's name was Alice Cooper and Alice's name was Alice. So, but that's what got people's attention to begin with. So that's something that we live with forever. And we were told that because I was one of the main critics of that it's like the Stones. It's not always Mick Jagger. It's all the guys in the Stones are always pushed.
Right.
And from a musician standpoint, and Alice Cooper, everybody was a very interesting, very charismatic person in the band, and we were told that the PR company that we all paid equally, if they got $1,000, everybody in the band gave them $200. So. We paid everybody everything was shared by us as far as the finances went, but always guaranteed that no Alice would ever go solo, and then ultimately he did. So, but that's what happens in the music business. Unfortunately, crazy things happen. I always said if there's a music book of ethics that ever comes out, 300 pages, every page would be blank. But that's another story.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know eventually that was the last album you guys did, and you kind of went into a different route after a while, selling real estate. I guess how did that come about, and was that difficult to kind of make that transition out of the rock lifestyle and being on the road to doing the real estate stuff?
Well, I'm one of the few people that probably, I mean, being on the road, I was more comfortable on the road than being at home, and I always was. And so I was 2 weeks after a tour, I was ready to, back up and start doing it again. And so after, I think it's just the I love everybody in the band. Our management, was great while we were together. And really no complaints, and still to this day we're all friends, and that's the biggest part of the positive from everything. But I made a couple of investments in real estate when the band was together, because I had a little bit extra money now and then, and made some money from the investment. So my interest was peaked then in the early '70s, and by the time the '80s rolled around, I had gone through a pretty crazy rock and roll divorce, and by the mid '80s, early '80s, I recorded an album with the Plasmatics, their second album, Plasmatics Beyond the Valley, in 1984, which was a very cool album.
Sure.
Challenging to say the least. These guys are amazing. But and then Buck Dharma recorded some songs and wrote some songs with him on his solo album. But by the mid '80s, I kind of just wanted a whole new direction in my life. And since I was already, I'm a Libra, so I like art and I like business, and I can balance the two very well together. And so I ended up getting my license, and I wasn't really going to become a realtor, but a friend of mine had a company, and she invited me to join. And I sat down one day, and I got a customer, and they bought a house, and they fixed it up and flipped it, and I sold both of them, and so I was kind of on my way, and had a really good career. And the last couple of years slowed down a little bit. I mean, I'm still involved. I still always maintain my license here in the state of Connecticut, but it was just one of those things, and it also gives you. It's one of those careers that you can set your own time schedule. It's not a 9-to-5 job. You can spend an awful lot of time, which I have. It's great for the creative part of you, because I had everything, in marketing, and from the business cards and brochures and videos, and I even had my own radio program about real estate. And so it certainly is a great vehicle for someone that's creative to get your name and your business out there. But like I said, it was successful, but it also gave me the opportunity to make my own schedule. So if something arose that I could record an album or write with people, or keep my creative juices flowing in rock and roll, I would do that, and I always have, and all the way up to 1967 when I went out to Dallas, Texas. Mike Bruce invited me out there, and Glenn Buxton also was there, and we did some shows and played, just hung out together for like 2 weeks. And it had been a long time since I'd seen him, and unfortunately Glenn, after we left on a Monday, I got a call the next Saturday night from I had two messages, one from Glenn's sister and one from Alice, that it was a Sunday morning. I was on the golf course, and I had a message from both of them that Glenn had passed away the evening before, and I couldn't believe I was with him 6 days prior to that, and he was perfectly fine. But there was a lot of insanity in rock and roll, and I just needed a totally new lifestyle and a whole new group of friends. And the only friends I really ever had were close to me were the guys in the group and a few people affiliated around that.
Sure. Yeah, you mentioned though, maintaining the friendship over the years, and I know you've played with Dennis Dunaway recently, and even with Alice on his recent Nightmare album, but. We're hearing rumors now, maybe the original guys are getting back together. Can you maybe clarify that, or let us know if there's anything going on?
Well, I mean, Alice has done maybe a half a dozen interviews, and he mentions the fact that we've been together. Mike Bruce and he and I were together writing some songs the early part of the year, and I had made a decision last year to spend most of the winter, get out of the New England area and spend most of the winter in a place I really love in Arizona, and I planned to go out there for 4 months. So when I was going out there, of course, I contacted Alice and contacted Michael Bruce and let him know I was coming out. We get together socially like we always do, and Alice, I guess, had already talked to Michael about possibly writing some songs, and he had mentioned to me about writing some songs. So I ended up being in Arizona, and I'm just there to play golf and relax for a couple of months, and now I have to call a friend of mine, Rick Tedesco, who has a guitar store here in Connecticut. And I told him to send the guitar out to me. I needed something to write songs on. So it was great. I mean, we hung out, like I say, socially, had dinner, went to movies, went to the opening day of the Diamondbacks baseball team in Arizona, and Mike and Alice and I, and it was just great to hang out like we hadn't had an opportunity in so long. And Alice, of course, was off the road, and so we'd be hanging out at his house and writing the songs. We demoed up about 5 songs. So from your question, at this point, we're just writing material. And I know he's given some details about what the direction he's going in. Is it going to be an original Alice Cooper group album? I don't know. He wants us to play on the songs. How many will make the album? That's yet to be determined. But like I say, I know that he's looking at other sources for that material as well. Nothing has been mentioned about doing any touring or anything like that. At this point, it's just getting together to write some songs, and I'm really having a blast doing it. And Michael's doing a great job too. And Alice is still amazing to work with. I've always said, I know a lot of people say he's such an underrated lyricist. He's just great to work with. I mean, the lyrics just flow from him when we write a song together, and that makes it. And it always has. I mean, when we were writing "Schools Out" and "$1 Billion Babies" and "Muscle of Love," I mean, it's just it's fun. Back then, we used to have a couple of beers. That was pretty well known, and just hang out and just start writing. And these days we drinking Diet Cokes and things, but it's still the same thing. Same stupid sense of humor we've always had, ridiculous, and we have things that we understand and know that anybody heard us would think we're lunatic. Well, we are lunatics, but it was a great experience. But he pretty much has explained it. He calls it a mini reunion of what we've done so far. I know he's going to be on the road till November. We've talked about the possibility of once the songs are arranged and finished, of recording them at some point, and how many we'll record as the original band has yet to be seen, but that's what we've been doing.
Awesome. Yeah, that's exciting to see what comes out of that. And I know I've heard also maybe you're writing a book or maybe some other projects coming up for you.
Yeah, I've been working on a book since the early to mid 2000s, and after the Hall of Fame, I kind of slowed down a little bit on that. I just got so busy with other things, and one of them is a movie I've been working on for a couple of years, and it's just in the final. A friend of mine, Jason Bird, he wrote a screenplay and directed a movie called Desolation Angels: Rise of the Boas, and I play one of the main characters in the movie. Is a Russian crime syndicate mob boss in the tri-state area of New York and New Jersey and Connecticut. And we spent about 2 years making the movie. It's a very low budget movie. It's going to be black and white. It's going to be sort of like the style of movie from the 30s or 40s, and so it's going to be low tech, but a lot of acting, a lot of still a lot of excitement, and it's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to be very curious to see how it's received, but that's been a great project, and I'm also working on putting the music together for it, finding songs and writing some songs for it as well. So that's a big one. But my solo project, Killsmith, I finished my last CD was called Killsmith and the Greenfire Empire, and that's if you go to nealsmithrocks.com, that's NealSmithrocks.com, because I don't spell my name like Neil Young or Neil Diamond. They misspell it. That's their problem. I spell it Neal, and you can't imagine how many people still spell it Neil. And I've even seen some of the articles about us getting together to write new material, and it says Neal Smith and spell it with an I. I could not too much in this world. Well, that pisses me off, but that really pisses me off. Especially when they have my email address right there or something,
right.
and it's got it's Neal at nealsmith.com. So anyway, those are the projects I'm currently working on, and it kind of keeps me busy and off the golf course. But it keeps those creative juices flowing.
That's excellent. Yeah, it sounds like you're staying busy for sure. And again, Neal, it's been an honor speaking with you. I really appreciate it.
Okay, Dustin, great talking to you too. Finally, we got to hook up, and if you need anything, you know my email addresses, and I'd be happy to follow up if you need any clarification or whatever. All right?
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Okay, partner. Have a good evening.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.